Here.
Yep.
Good evening. Good evening. We are a few seconds late. Just getting some of the background stuff in order. As you know, this is Let's Just Talk with Kim. I'm Kim. And this, we are on every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Y'all, make sure you tell your friends. Make sure you turn on your alert so you know when I'm going live. Just make sure you get this thing popping. And we're interactive. That's why I'm live, because we're interactive. Like my shirt is, we looking for greater things. And in that same token, I have my girl Shelly White back with us because we're going to go talk about finances again. But this time, y'all, we're talking about debt planning to get yourself out of debt. So, Shelly, go ahead, introduce the people to you because it may be a whole different crew watching us tonight. Hey, Nisi Boo.
It is wonderful to join you again, Kim. I feel like I'm just sitting across the table from you. You make this very easy to do. And what I love to do more than anything else in the world is talk about credit and talk about finance and talk about debt repayment. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight and to share with your audience and answer any questions.
Amen. Amen. So let's just start from there.
Okay.
Talk about, first of all, I know we talked about it a little before, but we should start there too before we talk about planning. Um, Good debt, bad debt.
Okay.
Break that down again.
Here we go. Good debt, bad debt. First off, it's almost like I want you to think about almost like marketing. You know how they say even bad marketing is still marketing? There is really no such thing, I think, as bad debt. But what
Mm,
you have to remember is that your debt, your credit report is your adult report card.
right.
If it's correct, your credit report is going to tell me who you are you reliable, are you dependable, are you someone who does what they say they're going to do, can I count on you, all if your credit report is correct. That's what it's going to give me. So without
Right.
me knowing anything about you, if I pull your credit report and the information is correct on there, I'm going to know or think I know the kind of person you are. So that's why it's important that we all understand how to pull our own credit
Hmm.
and that we understand how to read our own credit report. Because with that being said, 70% of credit reports have some error on them. And it may be a small error because
Right.
while you are Kim Fuller, you might be Kim T. Fuller and you may have good credit, but there may be someone out there who has a similar social security number to you and they may be Kim P. Fuller. And if somebody's typing in your information and they put in Kim T instead of Kim P and your files get crossed, all of a sudden Kim P will show up or her address may show up on your credit report or her birthday, someplace she's lived. It could be all kinds of cross collateralization. I always tell people, especially men who are juniors and seniors and first and second and fourths, you
Hmm.
want to make sure that one, as an adult, you want to make sure you always use the same name. You always sign your things the same way. So if you
Right.
are Kim T. Fuller, I want you to sign Kim T. Fuller every time you sign your name.
Hmm.
I want you,
Hmm.
if you are a junior, to use junior. If you are a senior, use senior. If you're a fourth, use fourth. If you have an initial, if you're named after your Uncle Charlie, then, and your Uncle Charlie has a middle initial that's different, then you want to use your middle initial. Never forget my brother. I can remember one day he pulled his credit. He went to apply for something and he was denied. And they said that he worked at the post office in 1970. Well, my brother was born in like 75 or 76. He was like, how did I work at the post office in 1970? But
Mm,
my brother is a junior.
right.
And so, as his name without his junior, he is his father's name, which was my father's name at the time before he had a son. So it was very easy for them to get across and across cross pollination. So you
Hmm.
want to make sure that you go to annualcreditreport.com. And unfortunately, I can't type that in the chat and talk at the same time. So Kim, I'm gonna leave that with you. But if they go to www dot annual credit report, one word, .com, then that is where you go to get a free copy of your credit report. There are three major credit reporting bureaus. It is TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. You can get one copy from each of those three for free one time a year. Everybody in these United States.
Right. And
However,
you talking about breaking that up. Mm-hmm.
however, you don't get a free copy of your score. So if you have $5 to $10, order a copy of your score whenever you order a copy of your credit report. The report is free. The score will cost you between $5 to $10.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want to pay for the score, then I want you to order the free copy of your report and right away go to Credit Karma, credit.com. If your bank gives you a free copy of your credit score, wherever you can get a free copy of the credit score, print out the credit report and write down the score on that date so that you have the score that coincides with that credit report. Last time we talked about this, I'm old. So for me, I still love the old cartoons. And I always like to think about your credit report as the Acme Supply Company. And you know how the
Mm-hmm.
Roadrunner always had to order all the stuff that he tried to catch the little he tried to catch the coyote would try to catch the Roadrunner, and he would
Right,
order
right.
everything from the Acme Supply Company.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what your credit report is. So your credit churns along. You pay your car payment down, all of a sudden your credit score goes up 3 points. If it's time for your next car payment that's due, your credit score may be down 2 points. If you just get a mortgage, your credit score is going to go down initially. But if you've been paying your mortgage, your credit score is going to go up. So your credit score is constantly moving, constantly changing, constantly churning out a number. When you
Mm-hmm.
pull a copy of your credit report, the person in the Acme Supply Company goes, pulls the stop button. The whole thing stops. It immediately calculates what you've done and it pops out a score.
Mm.
And then as soon as it pops out that report, they go and turn it back on. So if you pulled your score every day, you may see your score is going up, it's going down, it's going up, it's going down.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So what we want to learn to do is I want you to pull a copy of your score and get it for, if you can get it free, I'm okay with using Credit Karma. I'm okay with using credit.com. I'm okay with just getting the free FICO score from your credit report, from your credit cards. I know
Mm-hmm.
that not no I'm not trying to give a shameless plug, but if you bank with Wells Fargo, they give you a free copy of your credit score.
Yeah, I think a lot of banks are doing that
Yeah.
now, because even like my credit union is doing it. So I think that is becoming kind of customary around the board. You just got to know where to find it at. It's not always as visible as you would like it to be.
Yes.
And
So
definitely looking at your credit report is a must.
and what you'll learn is, and notice next time you go into your bank app and you look at your credit score, that particular credit score has a date on it. So it will say, here's your credit score as of December 1st, 2022. And what you'll realize if you start to look at that is that they always pull it on December 1st, on December the 1st, I'm sorry, on the
On the
first of the
first of
month.
the month. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's because the reason why they do that is so that you can see around the same time what your score is doing. And that is really the best indicator of how your score is moving along.
Right,
Because if you
right.
pull it on the first and you pull on the 10th and you pull on the 15th, you might get three different numbers. It's like your weight. You get on a scale today, and if you eat something salty tonight and you don't drink enough water and you don't work out, tomorrow you're gonna be a little bit heavier. And then if you work out and you have a good clean diet tomorrow, on Wednesday you're gonna be a little bit lighter.
Right, right.
And
I
you
just
got
looked up my
yeah.
report and it actually doesn't give the specific date, it just tells the month. But you're saying it typically pulls from the first?
And are you looking at it on the phone?
Mhm.
Look at it online because
Okay.
I know that when I usually record the score, I'm usually recording it by looking at using the wellsfargo.com website. But my
Okay.
FICO
Well,
score
I wasn't
definitely
even looking
says,
at Wells Fargo. I can check Wells Fargo
yeah.
real quick.
But check one of your, I know that I usually see a date in which that score was pulled when they give you your FICO score. But if
Hmm.
not, then if they are not giving you a date, it may very well be that when you ask for the FICO score, they're pulling it right away. Either way, always check it at around the same time. So make it
Now,
the first
see,
of the month,
I
the
just went
15th.
into Wells Fargo and it does give a specific date. It says
Awesome.
November 17th.
Great. So you know
Hmm.
around the 17th, they pull your score. So you want to put a note on your calendar, a note on your phone, and check the score every month around the 17th.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
actually keep a tracker which tells me which bills are due when. And I'll just write on the bottom of that bill, with my November bills at the bottom, I put the credit score from Wells Fargo.
Okay.
So I keep a track of that so I can see my score over the last year, over the last 6 months, whatever.
Okay.
The good score, ideally, if you want to do a mortgage refinance, if you want to do a new mortgage, I want you at least 620 or better. Average credit score for African Americans is close to, or was pre-COVID, was close to 630, 650. Average
Hmm.
credit score for white Americans usually was, more like 670, 670 or more.
Right.
Um, I don't, and those are the two main groups that I talk about. I would feel like generally Latinos probably fall in similar to us. A lot of foreigners and a lot of immigrant populations, a lot of times if they don't come from an area or a system where they trust the banking system, they may not use a lot of credit.
Hmm.
So their numbers are going to look slightly different. But if you are an Americanized person living in these United States, you are probably a credit user. And so you're going to find that almost based on income, credit scores are going to be a little bit lower depending on where your income and where your net worth falls versus a little higher. And part of that is because the bulk of most people's net income is their real estate assets. And so when you talk about immigrants, people of color, single moms, uh, new people, new folks into this country, a lot of times they don't buy homes. A lot of times they rent. And if you're a renter, you never get mortgage debt. And if you don't
And I,
have mortgage debt,
yeah.
then you are never also getting the benefit of that mortgage asset. For most people, the biggest asset they have on their balance sheet is their home, even though they have a mortgage on that home. Generally, what we hope is that your house is worth this much and your mortgage is only this much.
Hmm.
And if that's
Hmm.
the case, your net worth is everything you own minus everything you owe. So if you have a car and if you have a car and your car is worth $20,000, but you bought it used and you only paid $5,000 for it, you have $15,000 of equity coming from your car.
Hmm.
If your home, you bought it for 100,000 and your mortgage is, let's say, 80,000, but your house right now has a value of 160,000, you have $80,000 of equity. So your net worth, if all you have is your mortgage and your car, your net worth is $80,000 because you have a home for that's worth 160 and you have a car that's worth 20 and you only owe, X amount of debt on that asset.
Hmm.
So net worth is how we think. And then we think about our credit. And so when you're talking about your credit, at least a 620 will let you do most of the things you need to do. That is not your floor. I'm sorry, that is your floor. That's not your ceiling. If you are looking at purchasing a home, I really would like to see you getting closer to 650 or more, because that is really going to open you up to be able to take advantage of opportunities that arise.
Okay.
Sometimes when you really want a home and we really fall in love with it, it's just like when you go into the store. If you know you can't afford to buy something in the store, unless you are really disciplined, you don't want to go in the store and just go trying things on, because I guarantee the most expensive thing in that store is the thing that's going to look so fabulous on you.
Of course.
And so what you don't want to do is buy that fabulous item on credit that then is going to cost you 3 times that amount, because Kim, what's
The
the interest
interest.
rate on a Macy's charge?
Exactly. It's like 20 something.
Yeah, it's like 26. And now that interest rates have gone up, right now
Hmm.
the prime rate is 7%. Our prime rate in the midst of COVID was closer to like 2%.
Explain what a prime rate is.
The prime rate is, if you go on Google right now and you say, what is the Wall Street Journal prime interest rate? It will tell you what the Federal reserve interest rate is. And that is the rate, that is the base rate that banks use and credit unions use and credit cards use whenever you talk about giving somebody a fixed rate or
Mm-hmm.
giving them a rate, a variable rate.
Okay.
So if you have a credit card, most credit cards, if you read the fine print, they are variable rates. So that means they are some basis off of the prime rate. So your Macy's charge probably says that your rate is prime plus 13%. So right now, Macy's is, Macy's actually is more than that because Macy's right now is probably 27, 28%. If you
Mm-hmm.
get a Visa or MasterCard, Discover, American Express, those are going to be the ones that are going to have the usually the lowest variable. So if you have a Visa and you have a good credit score and you have a good credit history, then you are going to get a Visa that might have, if the prime rate is 7%, you might be able to get a Visa for 9% or 10%. But if your credit is bad, or
Mm.
a little more questionable, if you're closer to that 600 or 620, then you're going to get a variable rate that's more like 19, 20, 22%.
Now, a lot of times we hear, about credit cards that you necessarily shouldn't have credit cards, but then credit cards can help you build your credit score. Now, years ago, I went to the university, the Financial Peace
Yes,
University,
yes.
and they were very big on not
Yeah,
having credit
yeah,
cards
yeah.
under any
Right.
circumstances, that you want to pay everything with cash. So that's one of the things, if I didn't learn about anything else, I remember that.
Okay. And I'm going to say something and I'm going to hope that I don't get in trouble for it. And let me couch it by saying, I love Dave Ramsey.
Hmm.
When he was on the radio, I used to listen to him. When he was on TV, I used to listen to him. I have never completed the financial peace workshop because it's an expensive program. But I have,
Wasn't as bad when I was in it. Now,
yeah,
woohoo!
I have his book, which is much cheaper
Hmm.
than the financial peace. And I
Right.
do believe, and if I were to shift around right now, I can show you that I have his 7 baby steps on the wall that I'm looking at.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
am a believer in Dave Ramsey. With that being said, I do not believe 100% that everything that works so great for this middle-aged white man who was of wealth at one point
Hmm.
is going to work as well for most of us who are working class people. I think that where he talks about the number one thing is to have $1,000 emergency fund. That's your
Hmm.
first step.
Right.
I would agree with him. But
Right. And you
however,
build on that. Yeah.
for most of us, if we, I don't know when you get $1,000 that you don't need. So
You can do it. You
no,
can do it in a
oh, you
sense
can do
because
it.
it's a build up. It's not something that you just put away because God forbid. And
Right.
you're right. Most the average person on middle class cannot just put aside $1,000, but then there's some that can.
And
But
and
if you
and you can.
build up with it with a discipline of the way I did it was have an account that I don't have free
Right.
access to. Like I don't have a card to. I
Right.
got to physically walk into the bank, and the bank isn't somewhere that is for me easy to get to.
Right. And I agree with you. However, the truth of the matter is, in most cases, when people finally wake up and realize that they're in debt and they want to address it, they don't have $1,000 ready.
Right. Oh,
So
absolutely.
in that instance, what I say is have a credit card that's your empty credit card that has $1,000 credit limit, and consider that to be your $1,000 emergency fund. Because the key thing about getting out of debt and really living debt free and learning to live off of cash is the biggest part of that. And the secret, if you talk about, oh, can we can give them a secret? The secret, if you have, if you're trying to get out of debt, is that you have to have something that is your emergency source,
Mm-hmm.
or your emergency fund. And as you pay stuff down, as you utilize as you have to hit that emergency fund, because we will, very few of us can get through 4 or 5 years in which we have no emergencies.
Right,
So
right.
when you need to hit that emergency fund, what's key and critical is that you put that money back. And that's the step we miss. And that's
Mm-hmm.
why most of us will say, I'm trying to get out of debt and I can't do it. I was doing good. And then, I hit 3 potholes and I needed to get $600 worth of tires. And then I had to put that on a credit card. You did. And that's right. And that's what you were supposed to do. However, once you put it on the credit card, and you were supposed to then take the next 6 months to, instead of focusing on your debt repayment, I'm sorry, on your debt pay ahead, you were supposed to take that next 6 months and replace that $600
Right, right,
so that
right.
you always have $1,000 available. And that's what jams you up. So I am not a believer that credit cards are bad. In this current environment today, if I need to go rent a car, I need a credit card, because
Mm-hmm.
I cannot afford for them to put a $500 or $1,000 hold on my
What?
bank account, which they are not going to give back to me for 7 to 10 business days.
Right, exactly. I mean, there's definitely times that you need it, as you stated. The thing comes in is discipline. You definitely need to have discipline when you have these credit cards or a credit card, that you don't run it amok and never pay back. I mean, it's
Yeah,
a loan that you need to pay back, and you do need to do it in a timely fashion.
right.
So let's talk about some ways that some plans that we can pay down our debt.
Okay, I am so excited. When I tell you I love talking about debt repayment plans. And I'm looking at the time. I'm going to do this in 3 minutes or less. And nobody who's ever taken my class have heard me do this in 3 minutes or less. But
That's
here
good. We
is
got time. We
because
go
we got
ahead.
to talk about the facts and we got to give people a chance to ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, here's the short. I'm gonna give you the short version of my story. Born and raised in Philadelphia, graduated from engineering and science, left Philadelphia to go to Purdue University, got graduated in 4 years from Purdue University with a bachelor's degree, came back home, and never left Philadelphia again. I worked for AT&T computer sales. I had that job. I had the job offer before I graduated from college. So in 1990, when I graduated from Purdue University, I had a job that I stepped into. I think I might have taken maybe half a week off. I went and started this fantastic job working for AT&T with an expense account and 20, and $25 a day that I could eat with and drink with every night with the rest of my
Mm.
team that was part of this group that of new hires. And 6 months later, they laid off the whole group of us. So
Wow.
in June, I was the cream of the crop. In November, I was back home in the same pink room that I left, without no job and without a degree. I mean, and with a degree, but
Mm-hmm.
without a job. And so I then spent 6 to 9 months on unemployment. I started working temp jobs. I ended up finding another job about a year later, which wasn't even making half the money that I was making at AT&T. But again, I was living at home and I didn't need much. And I knew at some point something would turn around. I started working job number two. Ended up getting a job working for starting with Wells, starting with Wachovia.
Okay.
I'm sorry, starting with First Fidelity as part of their banker training program. So I
Mm-hmm.
worked First Fidelity, Fidelity, First Union, Wachovia, Wells Fargo. And I was there for 18 years total. While I was at the bank, I was traveling and my credit was so raggedy when I started working for that bank that I could not get when I was working for Fidelity Bank, I could not get a Fidelity credit card. My finances were so raggedy that within 2 to 3 months, I got kicked out of the bank and couldn't even have a checking account because I had bounced so many checks
Oh, Lord,
as a
today.
new hire. And so I couldn't even get the employee checking at one point.
Mm-hmm.
I had a car that I'll never forget. I was traveling, working in Allentown. And at 7 o'clock in the morning, my father called me because at this point, My father was a co-signer on my car, and he called me and said at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody knocked on my door last night to pick up your car. He said, I don't know what you need to do, but you need to do it quickly. And he hung up the phone on me. And for those of you who know me, my family will tell you, Shelly is the golden child. I am the oldest of the clan. I am the child that gave him no problems. I am the child that was the apple of his eye. And my father was a police officer and in the service prior to being a police officer. So if you know, like I know, he was blah, 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 blah. To this
Mm-hmm.
day, 30 years later, if I say, Daddy, what do you want for your birthday? He said, I want you to pay your bills. 30 years later, I have a car. I have established. I have figured out how to work my life. I teach credit. And this many years later, if I ask my dad today, what do you want for Christmas? He'll say, I want you to pay your bills.
Right, right,
Okay.
right.
That is the kind of person he is. And I was devastated. I literally went to Consumer Counseling Credit Service at the time, which is now Clarify. And Clarify is a nonprofit financial counseling service. So when I say a nonprofit financial counseling service, they are not going to try to sell you something that's going to make them money. They are not going to
Mm-hmm.
run your credit into the ground so that they can then represent you. They are going to always keep your best interest at heart because they have money and they are funded to help people resolve their credit issues. I went to Consumer Counseling Credit Service at Delaware Valley on 1600 Market Street, I think at the time. And I walked in there and said, I owe about $10,000 worth of debt. Everything is past due. I don't know how to do this. I need you guys to help me fix it. And they said, okay, we'll sign you up for a debt repayment plan. You give us $100 a month. We can put these 5 credit cards into a debt plan. And I paid them $100. And 4 years later, they had paid off all 5 of these credit cards that were $10,000 worth of debt.
Wow.
However, now that I know, I can help you do it. And you don't have to even pay them to do it. Um, the one thing was when I was 25 and I was going through that, I couldn't understand why I was going through that. But I'll tell you that whoever you call your God, whatever you believe in, the third power, whatever it is that, the audience believes, understand that life does not waste experiences. I can
Mm,
only say God because for me, it was God. God does not waste
absolutely.
experiences. And
Mm-hmm.
so at 25, I couldn't understand why I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. I was getting ready, I almost lost my car. My father knew that I was in debt. Why am I facing all this? Well, I was facing it because in 2008, when I got laid off from the bank. And then I spent the next 10 years unemployed or underemployed, married to somebody who was also unemployed or underemployed.
Mm.
That within that time, with no job, my credit was so good and my credit history was so good that I walked into the dealer and said, I need a new car. And they said, has anything changed? I said no and asked God to forgive me for not telling those people that I wasn't working. And I walked out of there with a brand new car and I ain't show a pay stub. I didn't put a down payment down. I did not do anything but sign my name and walk out of there with a new car because that was the third car I had dealt with the same company with. They had me on their finance records as always paying my car note and my credit score was strong.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell you that that's why 30 years ago, almost 20 something years ago, I had to be so bad and so shamed and so embarrassed because this many years later, I tell anybody, I can talk to you, I can teach you, I do some credit. I can fix your credit. I can make it, I can teach you the game because credit is a game. And if you
Right,
learn the
right.
rules, here's the rules. The rules are if you have a mortgage, you pay your mortgage. I don't care if you got to sell a lung, a ovary, and a foot. You pay your mortgage every month. You in something like COVID, you go to them, you have a conversation with them. Look, I'm not working. What do y'all have? You get into the plan, you let them throw that stuff on the back for a whole year. I didn't pay nothing to Wells Fargo, who had my mortgage at the time, because I was in the middle of COVID and I wasn't working. And what did I care? Look, y'all can put that on the back end of my loan.
Right, right.
I don't care. But what I know is right now I can't pay. And so that's what I did. You learn the rules, you do what you have to do. And my credit score didn't suffer for not paying my mortgage for a year because I was in a program with the company and we were in a pandemic and there was, nobody was paying mortgage. People were doing what they had to do and the banks had money to help you get through that. So you
Mm-hmm.
communicate with your creditor. So I paid my mortgage. Then you pay anything that's installment. Kim, when we talked last time about the variations of debt, installment are things that you have told somebody, I will make a set payment for a certain amount of time to pay off this loan. I'm borrowing $40,000 for a car. I will make a payment for the next 5 years of 300 and that's wrong, of $500 for the next, 6 years, 5 years,
Right.
7 years, whatever. That's installment debt. If you go buy furniture from Jerusalem Furniture and they give you, they say, okay, well, you're going to pay $2,000 for 2 years and you have to pay me $300 a month. That's installment debt. If
Mm-hmm.
you go to Best Buy and buy your computer and they put it on the thing and say, okay, well, we can do it. We'll give you a payment plan for 18 months. That's installment debt. That's the next highest credit. So your mortgage is your gold. No, gold. So yeah, your mortgage is your platinum. Your installment is your gold. Your silver is your revolving debt. And so revolving debt is something that, remember the door. You're
Mm-hmm.
going through a revolving door. You charge something, you lose that much credit for however you charge, you pay it off, you get that credit back. So you have a $100 credit line, you get gas, you pay that line off, you still have $100 available that you can spend. Anything that's revolving is the junkiest of the credit. But what's important with revolving is that you pay always the minimum payment every month on time, all the time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the trick about all of that. Nothing gets reported to the credit reporting agency as late until it's 30 days or more late. So if
Okay.
if my mortgage is due on the first, if my car payment is due on the first, if my visa payment is due on the first, as long as I pay it before the first of the next month, it's going to be reported as on time. Now, all three of them, if I don't pay my mortgage within 15 days, they give me a late fee. If I don't pay my credit card right away, they give you a late fee. If you don't pay your car payment, they may give you a 3 or 5 day grace period before they give you a late fee. So you may still have to pay a late fee, but you don't care about a late fee. You only care that how it's reported to the credit reporting agency because that's what keeps your score up.
Right. You want to also keep in mind that's not best practice,
Right.
but when you're under
Stress.
stress to get things done so that you can follow what's most important, you need to keep that in
Right.
consideration
And
because
that's
those fees can add up on you.
absolutely. But if you do it as a emergency use, then what
Mm-hmm.
I also know is that almost all of those people will waive that fee once or twice a year.
Mm,
So if twice a year, if it's January and you have gone way overboard, you spent too much money on Christmas, you did too much, and now you've messed up and you were late paying your bill. If you paid them one time all year long, when you see that fee on your February statement, then you call them and say, hey, can you waive that fee? And they're going to say, well, what happened? And you're going to say, well, the holidays came up. I just forgot to pay it. I paid it a little bit late. And,
mm-hmm.
but I paid it, I wanted to see if you can waive the fee. And if you have paid that thing all year long, they'll take that $35 off and nothing. If you call your mortgage company, same thing. It may be $160, but they will work with you oftentimes as long as you've paid it for the most part all year long.
Right, right. So it's
But again,
best
you're
to
right. It is
stay
not a best practice,
right.
but it
It's
is a
best to
good use in
stay
emergency.
up to date on your bills. And like I said before, one of the things that I do is I try to pay things based on my paycheck,
Yes.
so that so I don't have a whole lump sum of a lot of things coming out at once.
Right.
So therefore I can manage it a little better. Not always as great as I would like to, but it does give me a little helping
Yeah.
budge when, let's say, I all of a sudden the bill is due and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's not as much as it would originally be.
Right. And this is why I think it's also important that you have an emergency credit card. And I say that because we just got done Thanksgiving. So, maybe you decide, what, I really need to go home for Thanksgiving.
Hmm.
Well, if you wait until 2 weeks before Thanksgiving when you decide to do this, and that's when you get paid, and you say, okay, I'm going to go home, and you have to take your pay that month, that your pay that week, and spend half your paycheck to pay for your plane ticket.
Hmm.
Then what are you dropping off that you should have been paying? But if you had a credit card, you could probably get that plane ticket a month and a half earlier when it's cheapest,
And get
and
a
you
credit
can
card that gives you points.
get a credit card that gives you points. But here's the thing: points only work if you really are living debt free and if that credit card is an emergency. Because if you really weigh out the points compared to the interest, most of us are paying for those points. If you're keeping a balance
Well,
on
I
your
know
credit
one of
card,
the best
you are not
practices.
you are not help those
Right.
points are not helping
If
you.
you have a card that you are looking to get points so that you could be able to travel, is what I was thinking of. That's one of the cards that you use and you pay right off.
Right.
You literally have the cash and you use the card just for the points, and then you pay it off as if you're at the register.
Absolutely.
Like that's not a card that because typically those cards are, like most cards, high in interest.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure you get those things off even before the interest hits.
Those of you who know me and know my circle will know who I'm talking about. But I have a very, very good friend, and she is amazing. When I tell you she's amazing with her finances, she is methodical and crazy and OCD with her finances. And as long as I've known her, she has literally put every single thing on her Discover card. She will put
Okay.
gas on her Discover card. She will put groceries on her Discover card. Anywhere we go, the first card she pulls out is Discover, and she will only use a Visa or Mastercard if they do not take Discover. But she puts everything on Discover that she can, and every month, I don't care if her Discover bill is $500 or $5,000, she pays that Discover bill off immediately. And at the end of the year, she buys literally almost all of her Christmas stuff off of her Discover card cashback bonus. She picks out credit. She says, okay, this person's going to get an Amazon card. This person's going to get a this card. She does almost all of her shopping off of her cashback build up from Discover.
Yeah, like
She's a winner.
one of the questions was, is there a good credit card company, a great card company?
There is a great credit card company for you based on your profile. If you are someone who has just average credit, let's say you're a mid 650s, you could probably get a decent rate Visa or MasterCard. But what I would suggest you do is go first to your bank or your credit union, whoever is your regular person, and see what kind of credit card offer they have going. Ideally, you want a credit card that here's the most important things for everybody. You want no annual fee.
Hmm.
You want something that has a reasonable interest rate based on your credit.
What's
So
a
if you're
reasonable, regardless of the credit, what's something what would be reasonable to see?
we can't say regardless of the credit, because in all cases they're going to base your interest rate off your credit. But what
Okay.
we will say is, if your credit is average, if you are a 650 to 700, then I believe that a reasonable, if the prime rate right now is 7%, then I think a reasonable one would be 13, 14%.
Okay.
If you have a poor credit score, if your credit score is closer to 600, then you still might need that emergency credit card. And remember, we only pay interest. The only place that interest comes into play is if we're holding a balance. So if it's really an emergency credit card, the interest rate doesn't matter so much.
If you
So
pay it off.
if that in that case, if you have a lower credit score and your credit score is closer to 600 or below, maybe you can only get one that the interest rate is 25%. And that's okay. But here's how we're going to slowly build our credit up. You're gonna get that Visa MasterCard. Let's say it has a $500 limit. You are never going to let that limit go over $130 because you want your limit at 30% or less. You want your balance at 30% or less of the limit. You
Hmm.
are then going to go, you're going to take your Visa. You just got your Visa, it's $500 limit. You're going to go fill up your tank with gas. That's $70. At the end of the month, you're going to pay 30.
Nowadays,
Yeah. You're going to
it's
pay
more than that.
$35. Well, I have a car. I don't have a truck. But at the end of the month, you're going to pay $35.
Hmm.
So you're going to pay a little bit of interest, but that's okay. The second month, you're going to pay it all off. So month two, month one, you paid half of the balance. Month two, you paid it off. Month three, you have nothing. You owe them nothing. Month four, you get another gallon of gas. If you do that for about 6 to 12 months, they are going to increase your credit limit. You're going to see your credit score start to go up because you are showing that you are able to handle your money and manage your debt and manage your credit, and your credit is not managing you.
Okay.
All right.
What's the
So,
best way? Like I've known the best practice of paying off your debt, which I want to give some focus on to for these last few minutes of the show, is start with the lowest amount, lowest bill. And then when you pay that off, then add that to like all your other ones you pay in minimum,
yeah.
whatever the minimum they're asking for, that's what you pay. Then once you get that lowest bill out the way, you take that amount and roll it over to the next one so that you can start decreasing
Yeah.
your debt.
And Kim, I will say this is where Shelly deviates from financial peace, because you're correct. And what they will tell you, and what the financial experts will tell you, is you want to take the bill that has either the highest balance or the highest interest rate. I say know yourself. I am the kind of person that I have a very hard time staying focused on one thing. So for me, I have to have wins. So what I suggest people do is you want to first list out all your credit debts. So put on a piece of paper all your credit cards, write down the credit card, write down the interest rate of that credit card, write down the credit limit of that credit card, and the balance on that credit card, and the minimum payment. So we made 5 columns. We have the credit card, so we put Visa. The interest rate on that is 20%. The balance on that is $1,000. The credit limit is $5,000. The minimum payment is $25. So we got one card that we have a $25 minimum payment. We have a Macy's card. So our Macy's, the interest rate is 30%. The um the balance is $1,000. The limit is $5,000. Your monthly payment is $5. The credit cards that are store cards that usually have the highest interest rates, they usually require the smallest minimum balance, because they don't care if you pay that off for the next 600 years, because they're making money off your interest. Okay.
Right.
So now following that example, we owe $30 a month in minimum payments. $25 for the Visa, $5 for the Macy's. Both of those things have $1,000 limits. I'm sorry, have $1,000 balances and $5,000 limits. So what you want to do is say, okay, do I have any extra income? And this is what becomes important. You have to know what your budget is. You have to know how much are you spending every month, and how much do you have that you can dedicate to debt service. If you cannot say, I can every month put an extra $50 on to my bills, then you might want to think about, can I start babysitting? Can I start cleaning houses? Can I start working a little part-time job? You need something that I can put an extra $50, extra $100 on my bills every month. And so now we remember we took out the emergency credit card. So we have $1,000 on emergency. If we didn't have $1,000 on emergency, we're going to spend the first 6 months saving up $500. And then so that way we have some emergency money, because the emergency money is what's going to keep you from going back into credit card debt.
Mhm. Mhm.
But assuming that we've taken care of that, we have $30 that we have to pay every month. We have two bills of $1,000 each. You're going to say, oh, you know what, Shelly, I got this. I can pay an extra $100 on my bills. Okay. So what people will tell you is take the highest interest rate, because that's the one that's costing you the most money. Well, for me, I say take the highest interest rate, or if you have three or four, and if one of them's only $200, knock out the little one first.
Right. Right.
Go for the achievement, go for the success, go for the win. If that makes you feel better than going for the long haul. Some people are good looking at the long haul. I need the win. For me, if I have 5 credit cards, if I can get rid of one of them and only work on 4, I'm feeling good, even though that might have been the lowest balance and not necessarily one that's costing me the most. So you
Right.
pick whichever one you want. But in any case, we take the $100, we put the $100 towards the credit card. Now, in that case, we know that the Macy's is going to be the higher interest rate. So we're paying 30% on Macy's. So we're going to take the $100, we're going to put it on Macy's. So instead of paying Macy's $25 a month, we are paying Macy's $125 a month. Well, your balance is only $1,000, which means in about 8 months, you have paid Macy's off. So now, 8 months later, now because we're still paying the $25 to the Visa, we're
Mhm.
paying that every month. We've been paying Macy's $105. So now we're going to take that $105. Don't forget the Macy's bill. We're going to take that $105 that we no longer have to pay, and we're going to put that whole 105 onto the Visa.
Mhm.
So 8 months in, we got rid of Macy's. And now in another roughly, now we've been paying Macy's 25. So it's not going to take us the full 8 months to pay the next credit card off,
Visa. Mhm.
the Visa off. It may only take us 6 months to pay the Visa off, because one, the Visa has the lower interest rate. And we have been paying Visa $25 a month for the last 8 months.
Right.
And so
So it's
now,
lower.
boom, you look up 16 months later, you have no credit card debt.
Right.
But here's the clicker. You had Christmas came up in the middle of that, because we went 18 months. So when December comes around, you got a new grandbaby and you don't have no control, because that's what y'all grandparents do. And you done went out and bought the baby, a driving car, even though the baby's only 6 months old. And, you done did all this foolishness. And so now you spent $300 on your emergency credit card. Well, in January, instead of putting your extra $100 towards Macy's or Visa, you're gonna put your $100 on that Visa card that you spent the $300 in. And so
Right.
now your debt repayment plan is going to stop for January, February, March, so that you can rebuild your emergency fund. Because what we don't want to happen is, if you don't rebuild that emergency fund in March, when you hit a pothole from the winter driving around Philadelphia and you need a $200 tire, you don't want to only have $200 in your emergency fund that you now
Mhm.
need to take. Because once you hit that first tire, that next week you're going to bust the second tire, because that's what happens.
So what are you saying, that you just go that back to paying the basic, the minimum, and then put that extra funding towards your emergency fund?
Yes. So that
Okay.
at all times, for the rest of your life, until your debt is paid off, you are going to be putting that extra $100 somewhere. But it's going to debt as long as you have an emergency fund. If you
Mhm.
need to hit your emergency fund, then you need to refill your emergency fund and then go back to working on the debt, because you are still preserving your credit score and you are still doing well for yourself by making at least the minimum payment every month, on time, all the time.
Okay. I have a question that came via
Hmm.
text. It says, I've been with Discover for 20 years. I
Okay.
had the same high interest rate. My credit score is noted as very good. How do I negotiate with them?
You call them and say, I've been with you guys for 20 years. My credit score is solid. I've never had any issue with you. I need you to look at my credit score. I need you to look at my my
Interest
history.
rate.
and review my interest rate. Do you have a lower interest rate that I'm eligible for? And not only do you do it for Discover that you've been with for 20 years, I want you to do it for every single credit card that you have at least once a year.
Mm.
If you've been paying them all year long, I want you, especially now, I want you to call every credit card and say, is there a better interest rate that you can give me? And once you realize that, you know what, Discover won't do it, then as long as you don't really, now, let me caveat that. Let me go back. I don't want you to get rid of your oldest credit card. So if Discover is your oldest credit card, I don't want you to get rid of that oldest credit card. But I want you to seriously think about putting any more debt on that credit card because they are not working with you on your interest rate. However, if you have 4 credit cards, you only need one. And remember, we only need $1,000 in emergency. Discover is a little funny because everybody doesn't take Discover, just like everybody doesn't take American Express. So
Mhm.
I do think that if you have Discover and you're using it for the benefits of having a Discover card or for the benefits of having American Express because they have great travel and great points system at American Express, then you want to have a Visa or MasterCard for your emergency use because those cards generally are taken everywhere.
Okay.
But if you have 4 or 5 credit cards, you really only need one credit card, maybe 2. So in that case, I want you to call all 5 of those credit cards. Say, you know what? And here's the thing. People love a story. Look, here's the deal. You call them, get the customer service, say, you know what? I'm trying to buy a house. I need to, get my credit score up. I need to, lower some of my bills. Do you have a better interest rate? If 3 of them give you a better interest rate, close the other 2.
Right.
And if nobody gives you a better interest rate, don't call your bluff on all of them. But at least 2 of them, tell them when they tell you they can't give you a better interest rate, tell them, okay, then I need to speak to whoever it is that I need to talk to about closing this account. Oftentimes, if you have shown yourself as a good borrower, they don't want to lose you as a customer. And when you threaten to close the account, the person who couldn't do anything for you on the first try, when they transfer you to the closed account area, that closed account person will make it work out for you.
Right.
When you look at your credit report and you realize that you have stuff on your credit report that's pulling you down, that's been on there forever, I want you to call that company and say, listen, say, hi, you know what? I owed T-Mobile $300, and I see I have a $300 bill for T-Mobile that's on my credit report. I wanted to try to negotiate. Is there anything that we can do if the bill is showing up on your credit report as $300 and that bill is from 3 years ago? I want you to offer them $50 because especially if it's going into collection, because what happens is when somebody moves to collection, they have said, I don't think I can get this anymore. I'm sending to a collection company. The collection company has bought that deal from the original creditor for pennies on the dollar. So if you have a T-Mobile bill that T-Mobile has decided they can't collect from you and they've transferred it to ABC Collection Company, and now you're getting calls from ABC Collection Company. ABC Collection Company is going to say you owe us $300 for T-Mobile, plus you have $75 in fees, so you owe us $375. Well, when you talk to ABC Collection, I want you to know that ABC Collection has only paid T-Mobile about $25 for that account. And if you offer them 50, they are making double what they paid. So you start out offering them no more than 25% of whatever they tell you they owe, and let them say, we can't take that. Can you at least pay 50%? And if you can pay 50%, you take 50%. When you send them a check, do not let them use your bank account. Do not give them access to anything that they can take more than what you've told them to take. Send them a check so that you have proof that they cashed the check and they accepted the check. You send them a check. You write in the memo section of the check, per my conversation, pay off for account number XYZ. And then when they cash that check, it is acknowledging that they are taking this as full payoff for account number XYZ. because that is what you're going to need to keep. That is what you're going to need to use. If they come back and say, well, we didn't agree to, that's not full payout, or if they won't remove it off your credit
Right.
report or update your credit report so that it looks like it's paid, then you're going to go to the credit card reporting agency. You're going to go to Experian, Equifax, TransUnion and say, here's a copy of my check. I spoke to Mary Sue on December 7th, and she agreed to take $50 as full settlement, and that this should be taken off my credit report, or it should be reported as paid in full. And what they're going to do when you dispute with TransUnion, TransUnion calls the creditor. So you look at your credit report, you have $100 past due from Macy's. You say, I never had a Macy's charge. So you go to Macy's. Macy's said, well, we see you have a credit. We see you have a Macy's charge. You go to the credit reporting agency and say, I never had an account with Macy's. So they have to now go to Macy's, and Macy's has to prove to them that you applied for that thing. They have to show them your driver's license, the application, whatever. They have to prove to TransUnion that you had a Macy's card. If they don't prove it in 30 days, then TransUnion has to take that off your credit report.
Mm.
So it's a 60-day process, because you go to TransUnion, TransUnion gives them 30 days. And once they get back to them, TransUnion then has 30 days to get back to you. So it may take 2 months. But if you know something's really not yours and you want to dispute it, then that's how you can get it off your credit report.
Mm.
I just saw something pop up about student loans.
Yes.
This is an amazing time to owe student loans. If you owe student loans, first and foremost, and if you're getting student loans, anybody that has kids, anybody that's signing up for these parent loans, you want to only do student loans that are part of federal student loan programs. Because if you have a student loan through Citizens Bank that is not a federal student loan, then trust and believe Citizens has no obligation to do anything when the federal government says these student loans are outrageous. We're gonna give everybody a pass on their student loans. Those passes only apply to people who have federal student loans. If you have a private student loan, which is a student loan that you have from a bank or an institution that is not a Pell loan, it is not a federal student loan, and you will know that because it will say this is a private loan that we're giving you. They have no obligation to follow any of the federal rules. So that means that you could pay that student loan until you die. And what's horrible and tragic is that if you are a parent and you have guaranteed a student loan for your child, God forbid, those people whose parents, those parents of those 4 kids that were at the University of, I think it's Idaho, that were killed, if those parents have signed for any of those kids' student loans, they still have to pay that student loan.
Mm.
That
Even if
student,
it's federal?
even if it's federal, they still have to pay the student
Wow.
loan because they are guarantors on a student loan. Now, if it's federal, you can at least call somebody and make a
Mm.
plea and have an argument. But if it's private, they have no reason to let you out of that loan.
Okay.
And you can pay
And
those
one of the
loans for
good things
forever.
now is with the federal loans, well, it was, is that that they were going to do the write-off,
Yeah.
but now that's in litigation, and then I heard that they lost.
2
So,
people. I know personally 2 people that I literally, one of my girlfriends, she sent me a copy of her letter because I was so, you're kidding me. The federal government forgave $200,000 worth of loans.
oh yeah, before the court, from my understanding, they were doing it up until they put they took them to court, and
Right.
then they lost the first one, and so they're trying to do a appeal.
Right.
So prayerfully, because I'm part of that, they will get it overturned and
Yeah.
issue me my money, because I do know people who have also received that
Right.
money. So I tried to tell all my kids, and I
Yes.
hope, Sharita, you paid attention to Auntie's text when I sent it to everyone and emailed
Yeah.
everyone to make sure you guys knew what the legitimate one was. So I sent it to everyone. So I hope you at least applied, because I don't think they're even taking any more applicants at this point.
I if they are, I would get in the queue. I would still try it. I would, because I'm not I'm not as on it as I should be, but I would, no matter what, apply for it. And I would, no matter what, go online and do the and get into the queue, because
Mm-hmm.
there are people who it's taking time to do it. It does take a long time to do it. But as soon as okay to do this, and I do think they're going to get the okay again. As soon as they get the okay, they're the next group of people that are in queue.
Okay. I have another question is, let's see, on the credit card piece, if you close them, does it affect your credit card score?
Yes, it does. And I think if you look at the if you listen to the last one that we did last month, we talked very specifically about the things that go into a credit score. One of the factors of a credit score is do you have new credit? Meaning, have you applied for not a new credit that pulls your credit score down? A second factor is, do you have how long is your oldest credit? And do you
Mm-hmm.
have a long credit history? And so that's why I say you don't really want to close the first credit card that you had if that credit card is still active. You might not use it. And you can have it doesn't hurt your credit score to have a credit card that has a zero balance. It's okay to have a credit card with a 1,000, a 5,000, a $10,000 limit that has a zero balance. That's never a problem. The only problem is if you have a credit card that you have usage of more than 30% on it. So if your credit limit is 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, if you have more than 300, 3,000, or $300,000 outstanding, that's when it becomes where the credit card is almost not working, not
Right.
maximizing your credit score.
Mm-hmm.
But again, if you have, if you're, if you don't want to be maxed out on credit cards. But if you have 50 credit cards and all of them have balances and all of them are over 30%, if you don't do anything else but pay the minimum payment every month on time, all the time, it will still continue to work on your benefit until you can pay those down.
Okay. As
Yeah.
long as you pay consistently, even if it
Yeah.
is the minimum payment.
If you are buying a house, and there are people called housing counselors. If you're in the city of Philadelphia, if you go to the Phila.gov website and put in housing counselors, there's a housing counseling agency, a free, a nonprofit housing counseling agency in almost every section of the city. If you're in Mount Airy, it's Mount Airy CDC. If you're in Wadsworth, it's Northwest Counseling Center. If you're in the northeast end of the city, is Northwest Counseling. If you're on if you're in South Philly, I think it's the Point Breeze is the CDC that does it. Every section of the city, including there's a Latina one, there is one that Philadelphia Chinatown CDC. They have housing counselors that speak all of the Asian languages, just about. There is one for every single person. They can find a housing counseling agency where you can find a counselor who can talk to you in your language and talk
Mm-hmm.
to you about it. Those people are experts at preparing you for home ownership. So if you are a first time home buyer, before you sign anything, you want to get in on one of the first time home buying classes. You want to have them look at your credit report with you and devise a strategy around increasing your credit score. Ideally, you want to start working with a credit reporting. You want to start working with a housing counseling agency 6 months to a year before you think you're ready to purchase a home, because they are going to put you into the best position. They're going to help you do things to improve your credit score. And the higher your credit score, the better your interest rate is going to be. We just talked about cars and credit cards. All of that is nothing compared to a 30-year mortgage. When
Right.
you get your
Right.
mortgage, ideally, you want your credit score as high as it can be so that your interest rate is going to be as low as it can be. With that being said, interest rates go up and down. If you want to buy a house right now, if you are really in love with that house right now, if you know you can afford that payment, and everybody's telling you, oh, 7% is so much, oh God, you missed the ground. And our community is gloom and doom. you know I will tell you that if you are ready to buy that home, if you have found that home that you love, if you know that you can afford the payment. I know the payment is $200 more today than it was 6 months ago, but if you can afford that payment at $200 more, and that is what you want to do, and you are committed to home ownership, go ahead and buy that home.
Can you
Because if
repeat the I know you said Northwest Counseling Center, but you said to go to
you want to go to
www.phila.gov.
phila.gov, which is just
Okay.
www.phila.gov, which is the city website, the city of Philadelphia general website. And then you want to put in housing counseling agencies. And they will tell you there's housing counseling agencies all over in different neighborhoods. There's also a couple in Center City, and they either service an individual neighborhood or they service the whole city, but they all are a network of people. So they will get you to whoever you need to talk to, whatever's closest to you.
Hmm.
But you go ahead and buy that house, because right now the interest rates are 7%. We may see them go up to 10%. But what I'll tell you, as your auntie, as the person that is 50 something years old, that I can remember when interest rates were 19 and 20% for homes.
Hmm.
Okay. It feels unfathomable to a young person right now that they would pay that much. But I can remember when we had interest rates that high. So trust and believe, this thing is all a cycle. It
Yes,
comes up, it goes
always.
down. As long as you can afford it, once you get your mortgage, you fix it. You get a fixed rate. That's going to be your rate until you refinance. If you've had a home for 5 years, 10 years, you've been paying as agreed, you have good credit, you have managed that house properly, you will be able to refinance that at a better rate when the rates go down. Okay, do not let fear, especially fear from people who are not homeowners, stop you from doing what it is that you want to do. Most people, the biggest part of their wealth is because they are homeowners. So
Well,
don't
we're
be afraid.
well over the hour, but I know you had some good stuff to share. Um, Shelly has her IG. If you want to connect with her, you
Yeah,
definitely can connect with her to get more information on paying off your debt or establishing a better credit rate. You could definitely connect with her. This is something she knows. This is
so
what she's certified in. So make sure you do so. If you need the help, reach out to her
yeah,
on IG. That's part of what I do, is between the chit chat, we want to
right,
definitely get some resources out there to individuals who need help, especially
yeah,
in our community where we don't share a lot of information. So
yeah.
it has been a pleasure, my love,
Oh,
being out here with you again. I thank you for coming back. Oh, you just love me so.
I do. I just love you so.
So, y'all, as you know, I'm here every Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you check me out next week. I will have an exciting topic as always. Until then, ladies and gentlemen.